So, Elle, you nervous?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. First time on this side of the mic.
I know. Elliot usually is on the other side of the mic. But today, he's a part of our All Kinds of Crazy series. Wow. That's what's up.
That's what's up, man. Okay. Yeah.
I got that dish. Got that. I got that dish. 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 I got that dish. I got that dish.
Hey y'all, it's Onika sans Bianca today. You know, my girl's got kids. She's got things to do sometimes. So I'm flying solo dolo today. It is All Kinds of Crazy Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month, where we have someone share their lived experience story. And I don't know if you guys knew this about my producer. He's got some lived experience in mental health, and he's going to share that with us today. But before we start, how you doing, Al?
I'm doing all right. You know, busy with life right now. School's crazy, but I'm happy to be finally on the pod, behind the mics, and getting an episode in.
Yes, for sure. So how did that networking event go last night? I know you had something to do for school, and I wanted to know how that went for you.
You know, it went good. I think going into this situation, I was overthinking a lot. They really push that you have to put your best foot forward and present yourself in a very professional way because, you know, jobs might be coming from it. It can lead in a lot of directions as far as your career, so you kind of get the nerves. But everyone was a lot nicer than I had expected. Everyone was really warm. I think they knew they were here to talk to students. So, yeah, it felt good. I think I made some connections that might be able to lead to nice things in the future. So, overall, it was a good experience.
That's good.
No drinks, though. There weren't any drinks. So that made it a little hard.
Are like, no, we're not going to give the students drinks.
Yeah, of course.
You got to be on your A game.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like I said, All Kinds of Crazy Wednesday, and we want to hear your stories. So let's just get into it. Let's start with the wonder years, as I like to call them, childhood. What was that like for you?
Okay. Childhood was good. Grew up here in downtown Toronto. Good family. I have an older brother. We moved around a little bit. My mom was kind of, you know, she could never get fully settled into one place. So after a couple of years, we'd be on to the next. But we always lived in the city. It was good. My family, I come from kind of an arts background in my family, a lot of music. My mom was a professional singer. She had a jazz club back
I've heard your mom sing.
Yeah,
she is amazing. My gosh, she's amazing. She was doing a test at work we had like an open mic over Christmas, and she was just testing out the equipment, and I just heard this jazz music coming down the hallway. I'm like, who is that? And it was your mom. It was so cool. And she told me a little bit about her story too, so that was cool.
It's pretty amazing. She's been involved in that jazz scene for a while now, so she's pretty experienced. But yeah, so that was always kind of in the background, a lot of music. My brother heavily involved in music. I was. But then I think around high school, I kind of veered away from that. You kind of get distracted with different things growing up, you know, partying, girls, hanging with friends, girls. You know, all those life distractions. So I kind of moved away from it. But overall, I was a pretty happy kid, I'd say. Pretty happy, yeah. No real complaints.
And what were the teen years like with the girls and the parties, and like what was going on with you mentally during your teen years?
You know, I think a lot of the time I was someone that didn't necessarily find their passion, their thing. And I have more of a sense of it now, but definitely during my teen years, I don't think I did. And I think when kids don't have that one thing to put a lot of their energy into, be it sports or music or whatever it may be, art, whatever, you kind of substitute a lot of that with, you know, smoking weed, drinking, whatever it may be. And somewhat that becomes a part of your identity because that's something that, you know, everyone's engaged in, but if that's your main thing, it becomes a little overwhelming and takes over. And I think that at a certain point started to become a bit of a problem.
How old were you when you first started using marijuana, for instance?
I think around 16, 16, maybe late 15. And yeah, you just end up being kind of fully immersed in it. It's like an everyday thing. And now from my perspective, where I don't even smoke anymore, it just seems crazy that it was something that took up so much of my life and so much of my time. And I do regret it because, you know, that's time you could have spent crafting a skill or working towards
a goals,
productive things. Yeah. So I definitely, I'm not that proud of it, but at the same time, those experiences, you build a lot of relationships from those experiences with people that I'm so close to this day. So I guess if some of those things didn't happen, I wouldn't have those people in my life. So I'm not all completely regretful of it.
Of the whole situation.
Yeah.
So what was next for you? So how did you do in high school? Like was it like just partying on the weekends, or was it partying every day for you?
No, like as far as the drinking, it was only really on the weekend at parties and stuff. But at my high school, smoking weed was a real big part. It was an art school, so it was a real big part of the culture where at lunch everyone would smoke, and it was a regular thing to smoke weed, cut class, go to someone's house and smoke more, and it was a big part of the school culture, I guess you could say, and very normalized. And that then leads to eventually being involved more in the distributing side of it, and that's a whole other distraction that comes up. Thankfully, nothing really bad came of that ever. It was more just a quick phase, but you get involved in that aspect of life, and then you kind of look back on it and you're like, again, what was I thinking? Why did I feel the need to have this be a part of my life, and what was I trying to cope with,
or deal with? And do you know what that was for you?
I mean, now that when I think about it, I think it must have something to do with once I got my diagnosis and having that being an underlying thing that I just wasn't aware of. So about a year ago, I guess we'll get into that. Yeah,
no, just before we get into that, I know you were previously, you're in school now. Yeah. You were in school then. Were you doing a lot of drugs and partying while you were in school? How did that contribute to what we're going to talk about next, which is the diagnosis and what happened, like kind of the downfall of the whole situation? So just paint that picture for me, and let's talk about that for a second.
So throughout high school, it was mostly just smoking weed, drinking on the weekend. And, I was able to do that and still be pretty functional as far as getting good enough grades to pass, graduating high school. It was more so after, where there was a couple years before I started my first university program, where it became more of a problem, where it was a really habitual thing where every day, not every day, but it changed from being on the weekends to being like, no, now you don't have to be at school anymore, so every day could be the weekend, and you're constantly able to, you're legal now. You can go buy alcohol when you want. You have your own place. You can smoke when you want to. You don't really have the same restrictions.
Like checks and balances in your life, yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, it started to get worse in that sense, where it was a very regular thing that was going on, and I don't think there was necessarily a real wake-up call point, but there was definitely some nights where you black out, you have experiences you don't remember, you're spending money irresponsibly, but then again, it seemed normalized. It seemed normal because a lot of the people around you are doing the same thing.
The same things, yeah.
And you just think, oh, okay, well, everyone else is doing it. What's wrong with me
indulging?
Well, yeah. But yeah, then I went to university. I didn't end up completing that program because I was distracted with this lifestyle. So that was a pretty big, I would say, kind of not a downward spiral, but it was kind of like a down point where you're so engulfed in this lifestyle that you're not focusing on your studies that you're paying for and your parents want you to succeed in, and you're just so distracted that you can't even get through the first year of your program. So yeah, and then after that it was just more years of kind of just living that lifestyle where, you know, you're everything, like you work. I worked in different service industry jobs, so you're around alcohol a lot. Drugs. You know, you get older and there's different drugs that come into play. And you just kind of get stuck in that cycle of this is normal. You have enough money to get by and pay your rent and
buy your party favors.
Go out, have a good time, see your friends, but you're not really working towards anything. So that's where I was at for a while. And then I started the program I'm in now, which I was getting through my first year, and then my experience with the diagnosis happened, and that kind of derailed everything.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, before you were diagnosed, what was going on with you and your mental health? What was the issue? What was the concern?
You know, like I wouldn't say I wasn't very aware of a lot of the signs of the things that I now know now, as far as what are signs of depression, what are signs of mania. I think now, if I'm looking back, there was a lot of obvious moments where, yes, I was going through tough mental strain, you know, dealing with anxiety, but for me, I just thought, oh, this is normal. These are things that everyone goes through. And, you know, if anything, if you're really having a bad day, you're going to go out and have some drinks with friends and you'll feel better after, or you'll feel better during. And then you wake up actually after and feel just as bad because you're hungover and you're dealing with depression, say, or whatever it may be. So I think I was just really subduing a lot of the things that I was feeling by using coping mechanisms.
Like the negative coping mechanism.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk about diagnosis, but before we do, like, I just want to know what was happening, what was going on with you. Like, what did, for instance, mania look like for you? You talked about depression. You talked about mania. What did depression look like for you? What did mania look like for you?
Mania, I think, would just be having very, very wild nights, to put it like lightly. I think it would be having nights where you're out with friends and having essentially binge drinking, or you know, I don't want to get too much into the other stuff, but you know, having excessive amounts of consumption where the party's not ending for days at times.
Oh my God.
And, you know, I think now, looking back at it, some of those moments, that's mania energy. That's having this excessive amount of energy just to keep going at something. And then there was sometimes more positive forms of mania, where it would come to ideas that you would have.
Like your creativity would be heightened.
Exactly.
I've experienced that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like that, where you're really inspired, and then you really, but it's more inspired in the sense you just want to talk about it, and you'll talk about it for hours with your friends and really, you know, hash out these ideas with each other. And
ruminate and just.
But then you're not acting upon them. And then eventually I did act upon one where it was this idea I had about a podcast. And this was when I was really experiencing a longer form of mania. I just got extremely dedicated to like writing out a business plan. I wanted to copyright the name before I had even done an episode. I assembled a team of my friends with different skills. Like it was actually positive, and I think a lot of my friends would attest to that. It was they could tell I was very inspired by it. It's something I'd always talked about, but this time I was actually doing it, and I was, pulling everyone's skills together to really try and make this a great product. But I also had these grand ideas that it was a music focused podcast, but I was like, oh, we're going to be able to do so much of this so quickly. Everyone's going to see
the growth is going to be exponential.
The growth is just going to be exponential. We'll be moving at this crazy clip. And then it started. We got a couple episodes done, and it was going really well. But then mania really hit, and it essentially like going into psychosis happened, and that kind of. I mean, I know you want to lead into that eventually, but that led into my manic episode, which then led into my hospitalization and then diagnosis.
Okay, so what was that manic episode like for you? Was that your first manic episode?
First one, yeah.
Your first manic episode, okay. And I can only imagine what you must have gone through, because I remember what I went through in my first manic episode. It was complete chaos.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe it, is
pretty
chaos.
much the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like for you? What was going on with you? Was there, for me, I had like delusions of grandeur. I had hallucinations. I was heavily spending money. I was hypersexual. I was all over the place. So
literally everything that you just named, I think I experienced. Like, shit. Okay, where to even start? Well, it kind of, okay. So it started within something that I believe, which I know for a fact to actually be true. A friend of mine had an experience with someone who's in the Toronto music scene where she was sexually abused, and essentially I went on a crusade trying to avenge for her what this guy and his people had done to her. This involved me being really heavy on social media, posting way too much, trying to expose people, not giving threats, but talking talking wild and talking wild shit, where it was like, this is not, and all my friends were like, this is not Elliot, like, this isn't who he is, he's not this type of person. But in my mind, I was doing the right thing because I was standing up for her, and she I think has dealt with different mental health issues, more addiction issues, but she actually supported me doing it at first, because she was like, okay, someone's finally standing up for me. And there was actually a lot of people that supported it, because it's a known thing that these guys aren't good people, and a lot of people in the community know that. But I was really putting it on Main Street and really being very vocal and extreme about it. And then in my head, I got this understanding that they somehow found out about it. And these are pretty, they're pretty well-known big musicians. So I thought there was a hit put out on me. I thought they were trying to kill me. So then paranoia comes in, and then, feelings of grandeur, where it's like, you think, okay, so I'm doing this crusade, but now I'm also the voice to ending gang violence in Toronto, helping people that are in bad situations, in the sex industry, like all these different things where you want to really help people and you want to be this
like
savior.
A crusader.
Exactly, you want to be this grand crusader that's going to come and fix all these issues, and at the end of the day, when you're putting, and that's something I really struggled with after the fact, is that I put so much of it out there that everyone that I know basically saw me go through.
So
this episode,
this for me, I don't know this, because like I don't know this aspect. I'm 37. I'm an old lady, right? So when I have thank you, Elliot.
Relax.
Thank you, Al. No, but my manic episodes were like within my family. They were private. Like the hospitals knew, obviously the doctors knew, and like some very close. Like my family kept it like tight. Like they kept it a secret. So there was not that level of exposure that I would imagine you experienced doing everything on social media. I do recall my last episode, I did a lot of Snapchatting.
Okay.
And I saved videos, so I'll go back, and it's very triggering to look at those videos and see.
Same thing.
It's like it was like just dumb shit. Like I'd take a picture. I'd be listening to like Michael Bublé, and I'd take a picture of an elephant with a shoe and like put that like a caption on it. Like it was weird. Like it was just like stuff that like in the moment feels normal.
It makes so much sense in the moment.
Much sense in the moment.
But then you look back and it's like, what
was I
thinking? I must have looked so wild, and there was no like. That was another thing. Like I started to believe that music, everything was speaking to me. Like I would be analyzing lyrics and songs to me, like, oh, they're literally talking to me.
You, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So when did the hospitalization happen? What did that look like? For me, it's always my mom. My mom always sends me, or the police pick me up, or like she's always like calls the police and they'll find me and take me to a hospital. But like, what was that experience like for you? Was it a violent experience? Was it just an easy transition from, mania to hospitalization? Like, what was that like for you?
So yeah, no, my mom was, I love her so much, and she was really,
hey mom.
Hey mom. Actually, I don't want you to listen to this.
Don't listen to this, mom.
Don't listen to this.
We won't tell her. I won't tell her.
Yeah, she was always really there for me, and I think she realized early on what was going on and was trying to get me to go to tone it down, but then I was denying it, because when you're really deep in this manic episode, you don't want to listen to anyone. No one understands what you're going through, and you think you're just fine because everything's normal to you. But one day I get a knock in my door in my basement apartment, and my mom and two cops are there. And at first I'm like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy. I haven't done anything wrong.
And that's what it feels like, though, doesn't it?
I was like, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just chilling in my apartment, playing video games or something, and smoking some weed, and I had been inside the whole day. Like I was like, I haven't done anything wrong. Like, what's the issue here? And honestly, and it's kind of a blur, because another thing, at this time I was drinking quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit, like a lot. Where the kind of drinking where it's like, you're starting your day with drinks,
ending your day, middle of the day. I trust me, I know all about it. Yeah.
So it's really kind of a blur, but they came. I can't remember exactly how they said it, but they said, "Oh yeah, you're just come with us. We just want you to go to the hospital quickly and just talk to some doctors, just to make sure you're all good." And I was like, I don't need to do that. And I remember getting really upset about it, being like
belligerent.
Yeah, really upset. And then I kind of brought in, like, I started saying to them, oh, like, this is what you're doing to a black man, putting me in handcuffs because I'm trying to share my views on things. I started to be very, confrontational. I didn't get physical with them or anything, but I just didn't understand what was going on. But I eventually went with them and went to CAMH, was in the emergency unit, was there for, I think, like 3 days before I actually got sent up to have a bed up in the
it usually takes a while.
Yeah, and I remember being really tough.
That's your 3-day observational hold. That's what that is.
I really didn't like that. That was no one.
They lock you in a box and they just stick. There's a window sometimes.
I wasn't.
Was there a window?
I was in like a. It was almost just like a waiting room, like you would see in any hospital, but you were locked in that room with 10 other people that are going through shit. And I ended up being cool with a couple. Like there's one girl and one guy that were cool, and like I ended up kind of becoming friends with them. But then there were some people where I was like, I don't want to be around you. Like being around you is making me feel worse because because I wasn't in some like. I feel like I sobered up quickly, or not sobered up, but came more to my senses very quickly once I was in that. I was like, I don't need to. It was
like
here.
A wake up call.
It was a wake up call. I was still like, oh yeah, I got my my job to do when I get out of, promoting this podcast and trying to make unity and this and that. But I was never violent. I was never doing anything that was detrimental to anyone. So, and then I was around people that were, maybe having schizophrenic episodes, whatever it may be. And I just didn't understand that. And I was like, why am I here with these people? I'm fine right now. Mm-hmm. So that happened. And then they bring you to an inpatient unit where it's more people my age, I think maybe like 16 to
like 29,
something like that.
Usually.
And you know what? That was actually, I was there for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. And I mean, of course, you don't want to be there, but I will give it to CAMH and to their staff that it could have been a lot worse of an experience. Mm-hmm. A lot worse of an experience. They treat you really well up there. I remember even when I left, and they were like, "No, you can't do that." But I was like, "Oh, I'd come back and help out any way I could. Anytime I'll come volunteer," because I really respected what they were doing to help people. But yeah, I mean, that I'm sure you're kind of aware of maybe not the same experience, but you're up there with
the good,
people,
the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, so. Like you're getting fed your meds, you're under supervision.
It's almost like a vacation.
Yeah.
It's weird to say it that way. I've been on 7 vacations and not all of them have been good, but like the whole process of getting your meals at a certain time, waking up at a certain, like it gives you structure when your life is in complete chaos.
Exactly.
Right. And that about the hospital, I can appreciate. Not the gaining weight, not the like regulation and the whole things with the meds and all, what you're taking but the structure of it, mm-hmm. I can appreciate.
Yeah.
Like the meds part was tough for me.
Yeah. It was tough, but I think in retrospect, it was obviously what needed to happen. You meet some people there that I've never seen any of them again, but I definitely felt
close to them while you were there.
Yeah, while I was there, I felt a real connection with them. I was like, I really mess with y'all. Like, these are some people that you just get along with, and they understood that's one thing. They completely understood what you had been going through before you even understood it. Like, to me, I was still probably in psychosis to a certain extent, and I was explaining it all to them, and they weren't taken aback by it.
No, they weren't judging you.
They weren't judging.
They were
no
like,
judgment.
This is a great idea. Like,
yeah, this is all good.
Yeah.
Like, good for you for standing up for your friend.
I call them my soldiers in arms, like, because you're going through a battle. It's a battlefield in the hospital. It's war, and you have your soldiers, the people that you take care of and that take care of you.
Definitely.
And you may never see them again for the rest of your lives, but you're connected by an experience.
I'll always remember some of them.
Yeah, you're connected by an experience.
Always, yeah.
So we're in the hospital now. You're there for 2 or 3 weeks. What's the final take on what's going on with you? What are the doctors saying?
So, they start running all their tests on you. They figure out the right medication. You'll have that daily check-in where they ask you the same questions.
Over and over
again, really analyzing everything. But then you start to realize that you have to play by their game to eventually get out of there. Mm-hmm. And you also have to suppress certain things that you're feeling and not share them with them, because that will just make them think you're still... Like, you start to become hip to what's actually... why they have you there and what's really going on and what you had shown to end up there.
And you show the opposite.
You
Even
make
if
sure
you're not feeling the opposite, you'll show the opposite because
you
want to get out.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually we kept on having meetings, and then I think on the third week there was a final meeting where they discussed kind of the situation. They said, "Oh yeah, you're showing signs, and we think that you're bipolar." And you don't really grasp what that will mean for the rest of your life at that point. Mm-hmm. like when I'm thinking back on it, I was like, okay, sure, you know, like I'll keep on taking this medication for you just so I can get out of here. But then I'm going to get back to my normal life, and none of this is this is all going to be something that happened in the past, and you're going to move forward. But yeah, so I ended up getting released, obviously. Went back to living at my apartment for a couple months. And then I think it's the after effect.
Like I call it the comeback after the come down.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good way to say it. When you're really
depressed.
Yeah, like the ugly side of all this starts showing its head. When medication that they've given you starts having its effects, which aren't, you know, medication's tough because for me, since that initial manic episode, I've been on medication ever since then. And now I'm at the point where if I don't take it, I just feel depressed. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I actually think like, okay, what if there was a way that I could have came out of psychosis without getting on this medication? Would I be feeling these lows of that side of bipolar? Mm-hmm. Because I hadn't experienced them before, but bipolar comes on at a certain point in your life, right? Like
24 around.
Yeah, so but then I'm also 24. Like, okay, what I was dealing with it before and I didn't feel some of these ways. You know what I mean?
The medication is meant to suppress the psychosis and the mania, right? That's what the medication is meant to do.
Of course.
And I've said it. I said it a million times. If I could be manic all the time and not have anyone disrupt my life, I would be manic all the time and not have anyone disrupt my life. But unfortunately, that's not the society we live in. You can't have people running around having manic episodes all over town unchecked. So you give us medication and we take the medication and it suppresses some of our creativity and our, like, just a part of who we are. Because it is a part of our, for me at least, it's a part of who I am. You know, I identify with bipolar. I don't know if you're there yet. You might never get there, but it's I don't know. I take my meds because I know what's going to happen to me if I don't. It's more of a fear thing for me. I fear the hospital and hospitalization. I don't want to go back there, and I don't want to be in that space again. So I take my meds every single day because it's the lesser of two evils sometimes, and it's a necessary evil for me because and for a lot of people who are bipolar, it's a necessary evil because if we don't take our meds, we go right back to where we were. And sure, there's that shining moment that like everything is glorious and everything is great and everything feels like sunshines and happiness. But then it hits you. The psychosis, the paranoia, the delusions, the hallucinations, it'll hit you if you don't take your meds.
So the thing I've been trying to figure out with when I've talked to my psychiatrist and just been trying to understand how normal this is. I've never had a moment, it's only been a year, but I've never had another moment of manic or psychosis. I haven't experienced that ever since the one episode. Mm-hmm. What I experience is just lows. I'll just be really depressed, and that's what actually gets me to take my medication. It's like, okay, you won't feel as bad if you take this stabilizer. It'll get you from being down there to just being to level. You're not feeling great by any means,
but you're not feeling bad.
You're not feeling really bad. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've really struggled with, where it's like I didn't used to feel like that. And it's not that I would want to experience mania, but I feel like, oh, you know, in certain ways that would be you don't want to end up back in the hospital, but certain parts of mania are a whole lot better than
what you're going through
feeling
now.
Depressed.
Feeling depressed, exactly.
So I just haven't really got an understanding of that. I actually asked the other day my psychiatrist, like, how normal is that? And I haven't heard back from her yet, but how normal is that for people to experience just the lows. Like you're not getting moments of that high. You're not bipolar. You're you're diagnosed with it, but you're more just depressed.
Well, I've told you this before, Elliot. We've had conversations, I know, over the course of our friendship. Mm-hmm. You're not really going to know, and nobody's really going to know if you're bipolar or not until you have another manic episode, or maybe several other manic episodes. But it's a chicken and the egg, because you don't want to get there. That's why you take the meds. And if you go off the meds, there's a potential that you might get there.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because this is what, they have, according to them, diagnosed you with. But your diagnosis is not the end of your life. It's just something to help you deal with something you may not understand. It gives you a jumping off point for research and for knowledge and for education in a specific area. Be it someone says you're a person with schizophrenia, or you're a person with borderline personality disorder, or you're a person with bipolar. Mm-hmm. It gives you a jumping off point to research, what is this really about, and do I really have this? And if I don't, it's time to maybe have a conversation with my doctors about maybe not taking antipsychotics, taking medication more geared towards depression. But again, you're not really going to know, and I've said this to you before, you're not really going to know unless you have maybe one or two more manic episodes that you're actually truly bipolar. And that's just obviously my opinion. I'm not a doctor.
No, I think
I'm
you're
not
right.
a doctor.
I 100% agree.
I just know what the doctors had told me when I was in your situation, doubting myself and doubting whether or not I really had this illness called bipolar. And then I had several other manic episodes. And originally my diagnosis was drug-induced psychosis because of all the marijuana I used to smoke, right? So it was drug-induced psychosis.
That's something I didn't mention with when previously, before this all started, on New Year's of last year, I took LSD.
2019?
New Year's 2019.
Okay.
I took LSD, and I had that whole experience. And then a couple days after that, not mania, but these...
2018.
New Year's, New Year's...
2019 just passed, right? So
the start of 2019.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, New Year's 2018.
Okay.
Start of 2019. Yeah, I did LSD, and a couple days after that, I just woke up with this newfound, and I thought it was a really positive thing. I was like, I have this newfound creativity and drive to be really productive. Mm-hmm. And it started out really good. And when I was talking about this podcast idea, like that all came from that. And it only then started to spiral into this thing where I was losing touch with reality and really entering psychosis. And I've always wondered, like you said, how much, like, am I bipolar or was it drug-induced psychosis?
They often, usually with bipolar, the misdiagnosis is drug-induced psychosis, because usually people who have, and not usually, I can't say usually, I can't speak for that large of a population, but a lot of people with mental health issues also have dual issues with drugs and be it marijuana or cocaine or LSD or heroin or whatever the case may be, they self-medicate, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard to get a proper diagnosis as to what's going on with the person when they're doing drugs, and that's what they told me, right? But then after I'd had 2 or 3 manic episodes, they were just like, yeah, you're bipolar. It's not drug-induced psychosis, because the drugs are out of your system and you're still having some form of mania for 6 to 8 weeks, after, doing the drugs. So they figured out, this is what it is. It's bipolar 1 because of the severity, et cetera, right? So it at this point, because you're so new, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, partially to address what happened with your manic episode, which I'm going to give you an opportunity to address the nation in a minute, but also because you're so new at this, that like your doubts are so palpable, they're so real. And I always want to make sure, as your friend, that I speak the truth to you in regards to mental illness and what that animal is, so that you don't have to suffer through another manic episode. I encourage you, even though I hate it myself, I look at my meds in my hand, just for today, not always. I say that every single time I take my meds. just for today, not always, right? Because I don't want it to be always for me. I don't want to be an older woman with shaky hands that can't hold a cup and needs a straw to drink water. And, you know, I've seen it. I've seen what these pills can do to you. And pharmaceutical companies have seen what these pills can do to you. So there has to be, for me, a better way. And I'm going to search for that as my finances grow. I will search for that better way. But until then, this medication animal is a necessary evil, and it works for now, right? So that's what you always have to keep in mind. You're not sure 100% that in your heart, you know, that you're bipolar. You're not 100% convinced, but
there's just certain things that seem odd about my situation where having experienced another manic episode, okay, that maybe could be due to medication. Feel more just depressed when I don't take medication. And the fact that I had done a psychedelic drug prior to my diagnosis or my whole episode. So it's like these things aren't
adding up.
They don't add up the same. Like they very well could lead towards being bipolar, but I also think they couldn't. And you know, when you talk to medical people, they're just gonna jump right to bipolar, like.
And medication and
medication, that's going to just be their number one way of
go-to
handling the situation. But
their
go-to, and that I find difficult. And I understand their perspective, but I also find it somewhat irresponsible because it's not, you know, it's someone's life. Like,
if you're misdiagnosed, you're misdiagnosed.
And what happens when you get, you know, a dependency for some of these medications
on these drugs? I know I'm dependent on my sleep meds. I can't sleep without my sleep meds.
And it's like, if that's a real necessary thing that has to be a reality of your life, I can accept that a lot easier than we think this is something
that you might have.
But I need proof. You know,
you need evidence.
Yeah,
you need some kind of evidence. Well, that journey is going to be yours and yours to take alone in regards to what you choose to do about your diagnosis. I mean, I could discuss with you after the program some ways that, you know, I can help. You know, I'm always here to help.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But I want you, because I know you said to me, one of your biggest concerns about doing this podcast with me today was the fact that you have to tell your story and that you have to share with people what happened on social media. So knowing where you are now, that you've been obviously humbled by this experience, what would you like to say to your followers out there about what happened with you a year ago and where you are now?
Well, I think... You know, there was definitely, during that experience, there was times where I did some things that definitely pushed away some of my friends where I just didn't know better. And a lot of those situations I think I've mended in my personal life and gone out of the way, not through social media, but just had a personal interactions with people where it was like, I wasn't in the right space then. And my good friends know what I went through. But I guess to the masses, just this whole experience has taught me that you really have to, you know, take care of yourself. You make your mental health means so much. What I've learned, your mental health means so much to you, and a lot of people take that for granted. A lot of the things that are so normal in everyday life that we all enjoy, we take for granted, really can be taken away from you if you don't properly take care of yourself. And, you know, value your friends, value your family. Like, I know I wasn't seeing my family anywhere near as much as I do now previous to my diagnosis because I was so consumed with a lot of other things that at the end of the day don't matter as much. So, you know, value your friends and family, but you know, and for me, I'd like to apologize for anyone maybe I offended by things that I said via social media, anyone I scared that was concerned about me and the way I was acting. And I would also like to say thank you to all my people that stuck with me and didn't let what I went through make them judge me. Like I'm sure a lot of people did, but they stayed true to me and stayed supporting me and stayed, maybe without it even being said, just were there for me and didn't act like I had made somewhat of a fool of myself to everyone that we know. But you're still standing by me, and we're still good, and that means the world to me. But yeah, overall, just value your mental health, value your friends and family, be there for each other, and yeah, I think that's what I really want to push to everyone.
Perfect. All right, Elliot, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Onika. I really appreciate it. If you guys want to give a shout out to Elle, my producer engineer that I adore. I do. For his bravery in telling this story. If you guys want to give him a shout out, you can reach him and I got to do what B does, so give me a second because I'm not used to it. Dysh at daintydysh.com. That's DYSH at DAINTYDYSH.com. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, give us 5. If you're listening to us on any other streaming platforms, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, and share. If you're looking to reach out to Bianca and ask her why she wasn't here today, or just say hi to her
Where you at, B?
Where you at, B? Her Instagram handle is thatmotherbadxo. That's at ThatMuvabadxo. You can reach me at Best of Onika. That's BESTOFONIKA. And if you want to reach the Dainty Dish Podcast, it's at Dainty Dish Podcast. That's DAINTYDYSHPODCAST. I don't know why she's saying this is so hard. I love spelling. I love spelling. I killed it.
Easy.
Killed it. Thank you. Anyways, that has been the dish of the day. I hope you guys have yourselves a very, very, very happy hump day.